a ton of really great nuggets of information and tools to go over today. Patrick, what's going on, my man? So great to see you back in here today. See a lot of familiar faces and a bunch of new ones, which is awesome. Talking about what is obviously a hot topic, which is volunteers. I gotta admit, it's October, and I'm a huge Halloween geek. So our graphic designer at Bill Highway put together a really cool theme today, which I think we can all get in the mood and appreciate. At the very least, take a break from all of the presidential rhetoric and conversation going on in the world, and have a little bit of fun today. So let's go ahead and get started. First and foremost, I'd love to ask you guys a question. If you've been a part of any of our webinars, you'll know that we are this is all about you, and we like to engage. I don't want this to be a one-to-many type conversation. I've already been asking some people that came in early, like Angie and David and Sarah and Tim, just some questions about, hey, what are some of your biggest problems or obstacles at your organization when it comes to volunteers? So I want to ask you, go ahead and type in the chat and give me some of your top ranked issues when it comes, or obstacles, or maybe even opportunities that exist at your organization. Now, I might call it your first name. I'll never talk about your organization or anything like that, so you'll have complete confidentiality. But I'd love to learn, because we hear a lot on this issue, and we want to help build better tools to help you guys out. So volunteers, as you all know, can be your greatest asset, or they can be one of your biggest headaches. You need a way to combat volunteer turnover, and we'll be talking about responsibilities for chapter volunteers need to be simplified. But would love to hear from you as I introduce myself here, some of your biggest issues. If you don't know me or haven't been on one of our webinars, my name is Kyle Bazzi. I'm the Director of Growth at the chapter-based technology company Bill Highway. We're based here in Detroit, and we're founded in 1999. So that's a little bit about us. We only work with chapter-based organizations. So when you hear us talking, it's from over a decade and a half experience on this stuff. All right, I see Sarah, David, Lisa, Leslie, Lori. I see a bunch of people are commenting on their issues. We're going to talk about those in a second, so keep those coming in. But I wanted to start off with a quote that I read on what has quickly become one of my most frequent sites, which is Mariner Management Consulting with Peter and Peggy Hoffman. And it is, volunteerism is like a living organism. It grows, it declines, and changes in response to the stimuli surrounding it. If you take away one thing today, I would write that quote down and put it on your desk, especially the latter part. Most of you are the ones creating the stimuli surrounding your volunteer programs, and we're going to be talking about some tools today about that. All right, gosh, I love, as my wife knows, I don't know what it is about me, but I love zombies, so I love this slide. So let's talk about some of these horror stories and nightmares that can inherently exist when it comes to volunteers. Sarah says, no matter how much we tell them, they never know the resources. That's a good one, Sarah. So no matter what you give them, why aren't they using it? David, governance. Our chapters don't create governing structures that spread the work responsibility and create the next wave of leaders. That's a really good one. We're going to be talking a little bit about succession planning today. Patrick says our biggest challenge is volunteer turnover and having to retrain and retain. That's a good one. Lisa says senior leadership and the board do not feel as though they need our chapters. Oh my gosh, Lisa, give yourself a pat on the back. That's such a big one. And we did a webinar last week, which was a case study with Dresden over at the Consortium of School Networkers, and talked about flipping that concept on its head, and she had some impressive numbers to share with the growth of the organization. Leslie, no one's willing to step up to be volunteers, lead chapters. Lori, lack of commitment to volunteer, but want to be involved as an observatory or participation role. That's an interesting one, so how can we take advantage of that? All right, we still got a bunch more coming in, but I think that's a good place to start. Here's what I want to start with. If we can get everyone, even just for the next 60 minutes, to just believe that there is a better way if you're having issues, because trust me, there is a better way of doing it. The question is, how do we help you at your organization get that done? So in the next 60 minutes, we're going to assume that, hey, there is a better way, and you are, if you're in this webinar or at some point listening to the recording, you are the person to get it done. The challenge, and I'm sure a bunch of you are raising your hands right now saying, heck yeah, there is a lack of staff. I've asked this question in each of our last 3 webinars, and I'll ask it again, so please type in and let me know. How many people at your organization on staff at HQ, so not at your chapters, but at HQ, are full-time employees or part-time employees? How many of you are you that just work with your chapters or your districts or your sections or your state associations, whatever your components are? How many people? On average, in the Mariner white paper that came out, there was 3.3. I find that to be a little high often in the Oh, sorry about that. It looks like we lost audio. Can everyone hear me again? Okay, sorry about that. Let me know if we have any more issues with that audio. The question I had after how many people at HQ staff do you have is what percentage of your volunteer or your chapter's leadership are also volunteer? So I know some of your state associations or your chapters will get so large that they have their own staff, which can pose its own issues. But what is the percentage of chapters or components that the volunteer or volunteers only leadership? We find in the case study from Peggy and Peter again that 65% of leadership at chapters are volunteers. So how many at your association organization? Lisa says 100%. Chip says, hey Chip, what's going on? It's great to see you in here, man. There's 4 of us dedicated to the membership and chapters at the HQ. Awesome. Okay. So that obviously can be part of the issue in the challenge. So we're going to jump right into it. So we're going to frame this up a little bit, and I think that the Halloween theme is appropriate when it comes to dealing with volunteers sometimes and how scary it can be for the organization. But when done right, and we did one last week, we're doing another case study with FEI coming up in a couple of weeks. When done right, the chapters and their volunteers and that structure can be one of the most powerful triggers for growth at your organization. But let's frame this up real quick. So the challenge: good volunteers are hard to find. I can see everybody shaking their heads and nodding yes and no. So why are good volunteers hard to find? Something I like to frame it up as is, why do people get involved? And then why do people, how do you get people to stay involved? So good volunteers are hard to find. Let's talk about this. Demographics are changing. It's another week and it's another mention of the millennials. So I know this doesn't apply to perhaps all the organizations we have listening today, but a lot there's this huge topic of conversation around the demographic shifts that are occurring right now. Go ahead and type into the chat if you're having those issues. I know some of you aren't, but are you going through demographic changes? So the job market is changing. Millennials are coming in. They have a different way of doing things, a different way of giving their time, a different way of giving their money. They have different causes they care about. They care about things in a different way. We all know the Hurricane Matthews that just went through Florida and our East Coast, as well as some other countries, and the devastation there. And I see when I'm watching football and my beloved Lions beat the Eagles on Sunday that the Red Cross has their message come up saying, text this number to donate $10 to the Red Cross. And I can tell you for certain that the new millennial generation doesn't like to give money that way. We don't like to give money to a organization. We like to give it to a cause and see that impact immediately. That is a direct correlation to how you get volunteers involved at your organization. And then write this one down. This is so big, is experience matters so much more than busy work. So volunteers aren't measuring how much time that they're giving to the organization. They want to measure the experience and the impact. Oh, do you remember that one event that this happened? Or do you remember the 3 people we helped out during this one event? They don't want to talk about how much, how much time they had to put in on a Thursday or Friday night to get a task done. The experience is so much greater in the minds of your volunteers than the busy work. So the question I have for you is, how are you removing that busy work from them? And then professional development. I've heard over the last couple of months some really great stories of how at the chapter level and volunteer level, organizations, associations are creating different frameworks such as mentorship for this professional development, which creates stronger volunteer leaders at that chapter. So in the chat real quick, let me know, what are your demographics? So, are you seeing a shift to a newer generation? Are you having issues with that? Sometimes I see the donut effect, where you have on one side an older generation that has been the base for so long. You have this gap, and then you have this newer generation coming in. So you're constantly trying to do 2 things at once because you almost have 2 different types of members or 2 different types of volunteers. Sylvia, welcome to the webinar. She says, yes, we have new generation experience, but we also have chapters around the world, so we are dealing with the global cultural differences in volunteering. Wow, that is such a great topic alone that we're going to share some good tools on today. I feel like that could be its own webinar. Toby, the donut effect, yes. God, no, we are an old group, demographic iceberg. All right, David, good to know. I like that. All right, so let's keep moving on, framing up this this topic today. All right, this is also, I got a link here that when we send out the webinar afterwards, I want everybody to read this blog post on Mariner Management. Mediocrity. So how many of you feel this way? You don't have to type in the chat if you don't want to, but how many of you are experiencing bad volunteer leadership? So maybe you've taken over this position, maybe you've been in it for a while, but I'm a part of an organization that is a nonprofit, and it's called Startup Week, and we run Startup Weeks around the world. I'm the lead volunteer here at the Detroit chapter. We ran our first one this year, and I had alone over 150 volunteers for this event we threw, which we brought in over 3,800 people. And it was a free event. It's all about, our impact is all about creating a stronger entrepreneurial ecosystem in different cities. And I learned firsthand just how important people are, even on the volunteer level. So just because someone wants to give time doesn't mean that you should let them. I would write that down, and this is a good resource to look at. If someone at your headquarters or your state association says, well, they're willing to give time, can't we just find them something to do? The answer is, do they fit what you need, and do they have the capacity to do it? I call it GWC, get it, want it, capacity. Do they get it? Do they get why they're doing it? Do they get why the organization is doing it? Do they get the impact that you're trying to make? Do they want it, or are you forcing it on them? So are they saying, yes, I want to do this, and then do they have the capacity to do so? GWC, get it, want it, capacity. That last one, capacity, is an important question for you to ask the person, the volunteer, as well as yourself or your team that's evaluating your volunteer leadership. GWC, it's one of the best tools that I've used for volunteer leadership. Get it, want it, capacity. And then performance standards. Are you measuring how your volunteers are doing? Are you measuring what they're supposed to be doing, or are you just filling names in on an org chart saying, do you have this, this, and that position at your chapter? Are you providing a tool, even just a simple spreadsheet, to your volunteer officers that allow them to measure each other? Or are you just taking the longest standing members and making them your volunteer leadership? Be a great question to ask yourself, and we'll be able to provide you some tools to do that. Another one, so this is a growing topic of conversation in the association world, and that is the lack of innovation. I do love the costumes though. But the lack of innovation, the ability to try new things. I am interested in hearing from people on this one. Have you heard from your chapters that this is a problem, or maybe you've seen this? When somebody new, a new volunteer comes into the process, and they come with new, fresh ideas, fresh eyes, and the mood is to shut them down. Oh, we've tried that before. Oh, that hasn't worked in the past. Or, oh, this is why that wouldn't work. I heard a really great way to set ground rules for meetings, whether this is your staff or your volunteers, and it is the yes ands versus the no buts. And the yes ands, what I mean by that is when someone brings up a new idea, you affirm their idea. Yes, I understand what you're saying. Yes, I understand why you're saying that. And here's something to think about. And here's something we've tried in the past that might cause issues. That allows the conversation to continue. The no buts, the no, but well, why would we try that? Or the no buts can shut down the conversation, and it will kill your ability to, I saw a couple people say this was an issue, it will kill your retention on good people. The yes ands versus the no buts. So setting that cultural aspect of how to run chapters for your volunteers is extremely important. And what I would do, and we'll share some tools later, is share success stories from around your organization. So don't make this sound like it's coming from HQ. Say Sally in Texas is doing X, Y, and Z, and she's killing it. And here's some things that we can learn from her. So lack of innovation, the reinvention of these processes, and how good ideas get disregarded. All right, so just to kind of wrap back around and get some key takeaways here for the challenges, in addition to what a lot of you share, here's what volunteers desire. They desire, number one, to build a connection, right? We talked about why people get involved initially, and then why people stay involved after that. So building a connection, when we're looking to attract new volunteers to the organization, your chapters can be some of the most powerful tools in your organization because they can actually meet face to face. They have this personal connection with people. So getting people to be connected. And then providing opportunities. What opportunities can make good use of their skills and experience? So somebody comes in and they're just an awesome event coordinator. How do we use their skills? Do they GWC, get it, want it, and have the capacity? But then also, do we place them in a position that sets them up for success and they feel fulfilled from that? And then I put this last one into the stay connected, stay involved, and that's less commitment. Because someone wants to give their time, what happens, it's like this regression model where when they just get started, it feels good, it's new, they give all this time, and then it just starts to falter off. And I'm sure that many of you have emails or phone calls or tasks outstanding to some of your local volunteers right now. And my guess is, if we could do a study, is the longer they've been with you, sometimes the harder it is to get a hold of them. We got to find better ways to make better use of their time, make their time more efficient for the organization. All right, so let's start jumping into this, and how do we prevent volunteer burnout and turnover? How do we attract? How do we retain? And how do we continue to train? So let's get everyone back in the chat box here real quick. And I want to know this one. Do you survey your volunteers? And what are some of their biggest pain points? Okay? So we talked about earlier your pain points in running these chapters and communicating and building an organization through volunteer leadership. But I want to know now something, because this is probably a more important answer, is what are your volunteers' issue? David, amen, brother. I'm so glad you said, no, we don't, but we will. That is huge. If you do one thing this quarter, send out your first survey. And you don't got to make these complicated to get started. They can be so simple. They should be simple. Is just learn what you can do to help them. If you make it their ideas and get their ideas to be shared, then you will absolutely already be in a better position you are right now. Lisa, I did, but I feel it was too complicated. Absolutely. And I'm sure, Lisa, what I see a lot of times is you start off with this, we're going to survey our volunteers, and then you get more people involved, and all these questions get piled in there, and it gets just too overburdensome. You want to make this super simple. Use SurveyMonkey. There's all these free tools. Google Forms is one of the easiest ones. You can set it up in 10 minutes, and it all gets populated into a spreadsheet for you. And even just start, hey, you know, depending on if you've been there for a while or you're new, headquarters is trying to help out more. You know, what are some of your biggest pain points? And then maybe do some, you know, multiple choice, and then do some fill in the blanks so they can tell you. But just ask those simple questions. It shouldn't be long. If it's got to take them over 10 minutes to fill out, you're not going to get a lot of people to fill it out. Keep that in mind, okay? And then the second thing I would say is the surveys are great, the emails are good, the phone calls are really good, but the more and more you can get face-to-face time and doing one-on-one interviews will also go a long way, okay? All right, so let's go to the chat real quick and see what people are saying. So David, really appreciate that. Chip, do we survey our volunteers? Honestly, no. That is, I love the honesty. It seems like this is one of the big ones. Lisa, I feel it's too complicated. We talked about that. Sarah, we survey our members' satisfaction level once a year. Across the board, they want free education and events to be digital. Sarah, that's great. So that's your members. But what about your volunteers that are running your chapters or components? Are you surveying them to learn how you can help them better? To give you an example, Startup Week just interviewed me one-on-one. They have somebody at HQ that interviewed me as a volunteer and said, hey, what can we do better? Detroit actually had the biggest launch of all the cities across the globe for its first year. And they said, what did you do so well and worked really well, but what can we provide better? And one of my pieces of feedback was, hey, I'd love to see examples of what other cities are doing that we might be able to adopt in Detroit. And lo and behold, a month later, they provided the entire group, all of the Detroit or Startup Week leads across the world, with this booklet of different examples of how somebody ran a panel, how somebody collected sponsorship money, how somebody you know, got the local media involved. And it was so cool to learn from all the other cities instead of last year where we were kind of just winging it and flying by the experiences that my team had. Now we had this collective knowledge bank, which was awesome. Lisa, input from too many departments. I totally get it. One thing that we've seen work is start small, keep it simple, and then build off of your successes and use those as bargaining chips for the next thing that you're going to do. Okay. All right, we're going to keep going. Got a bunch of people still chatting in. I'm going to answer everything I can. Some of it might be at the end. Somebody asked to provide examples. So I know my marketing team is here on this webinar. We're going to get some examples together of surveys, and we will include those in our material we send out either tomorrow or early next week. All right, so it sounds like surveys were a big one, but this kind of leads into this next one. And just to do a quick time check, I know we're almost halfway through. We are going to share some more tools, so do stay in tune for that. But what about aligning your strategy? So I know most of you at your associations and nonprofits will publish your strategic goals that come from HQ for 3, 5, or 6 years, whatever the time frame is, and you'll post those online. But what about your volunteers? Did you get their input on that? I just talked to somebody that was leading chapters at a organization, and I asked them, and they did a beautiful job of, and they took it upon themselves to survey their volunteers that are running their chapters and survey their chapters in addition to their members, but it should be a separate survey, and ask them, hey, here's where HQ kind of thinks we're going. Where do you think we should go? And get their feedback. Even if you don't include it, at least hearing them out is so important for the organization, and so important to get them on the same page and keep them engaged with what you're doing or what you're trying to do. So aligning chapter to national strategic plan objectives. Now, I know some of you are saying right now, well, Kyle, you don't get it. Our chapters are completely autonomous from our national headquarters. And I'm here to tell you that that may be the case in your structure, but it doesn't have to be the way you operate. It might be the way that relationships have been built over years, right? Where the chapters kind of feel like headquarters is the big brother of the organization. But you can change that by aligning the strategic plan and objectives of both your chapters and your national. Maybe some of your chapters that are very large have their own strategic objectives. Well, why don't you make sure that you're sharing those and also making sure that you are sharing those within headquarters? And then taking the national objectives and getting feedback from those chapter leaders, okay? So aligning strategy. So it seems like a lot of us need to start surveying our chapter volunteers, our component volunteers, but also ask yourself, what are you doing to align both national and chapter? Now, you don't have all the power in the world, right, to set, I know, the headquarters or the national association strategic objectives, but you do have the power to communicate between these parts of the organization and improve that. That is what you need to become great at. All right, so here's the good news. We do have some data from case studies and white papers and surveys that we've done and our partners have done that we read, and it's about where you should spend your time. So the breakdown here, 77% of in this survey from chapter or component volunteers wanted better templates. So do you, and you could type this into the box, because if you don't have this, I'll share some of this with you outside of this webinar, some examples. Do you have templates for your event registration? Do you have templates for your application? Do you have templates for how a chapter can set up their own website? Do you have templates for email marketing? Do you have templates for renewal marketing? So on and so forth. Give me some examples that you do and don't have. And go ahead and type those into the chat for me. Templates are the #1 thing that these volunteers in this survey wanted. Going back to my example with Startup Week, that was really what I was looking for, was what are some templates that Dallas or Denver or Beijing or Sydney, Australia, what did they use that worked really well? And it's something you can, you already have. If you aren't sharing templates right now, find out what other chapters, successful chapters, are doing. Successful meaning growth and membership and obviously engagement from their members, because engagement's so big. And share those, obviously with their permission, share those with your other chapters, and those will become your templates. And then let your chapter volunteers and staff, let them tweak and evolve them, and you can hold a centralized database or centralized knowledge bank of all of these great tools and templates for your volunteers. Take that work out of it for them. Even how they run a board meeting, you should have a template for that. All right, database. So each chapter has own membership database. I know sharing data can be a huge pain. Create tables of data. That's a really big time suck for your volunteers. And then recruitment. Chapters solely responsible for recruitment. Now, I know some of all the structures and associations have their own unique wrinkles. Some collect dues at national, some collect dues at local. Some run their website only at national. Some have completely federated chapters where everybody's doing their own different thing. But what we want to try to get them to do is, number one, have that engagement. So if you survey your members, the top 2 items for value for your members are to network, get a job, things like that, and then education. But both are engagement. Your chapters can be masters at engagement, which will lead into better recruitment, better membership growth, more money for the organization, and ultimately greater impact. But you got to get them to the point where that's what their job is and the busy work is not it. All right, any questions on this about where you should spend your time? I got a lot of people saying, yes, please share templates. We are going to do that, okay? And moreover, if somebody has a good example of these types of tools, please let me know in the chat right now. Or if you're listening to the recording, send us an email, and we will, we'd love to share these examples around as well. It's one of my favorite parts of working in associations is everyone's so willing to help each other because we're all trying to make a different impact. All right. You see some of these things are hyperlinked, and we're going to share them with the webinar that, or the recording that comes out. So look out for that email from us. But here are some really great leadership and volunteer tools. Now, these come from things that we've seen from around the web, as well as a lot of our partners that consult on better volunteer programs, such as Mariner Management. And here they are. So online document sharing. And a good thing is a lot of this stuff is free. Make sure that you're sharing these types of events or cadences, which we'll talk about in a second, and have everyone on the same calendar. Scheduling is one of our favorites, and it's something that we put in the at Bill Highway in our emails, where you can set up a meeting with me without even talking to me. And if you don't have that right now, maybe it's an obstacle for volunteers to set up a time with you at HQ to sit down and talk through some of their issues. So scheduling is a really good one. Additional resources, nonprofit, ready.org has free online volunteer management training. Mind Tools, and again, this one's a little bit more just nonprofit based, but it's still got some really great nuggets, even though we are talking about chapters today. Mind Tools, Leadership Hub, this will go out. So we have a lot of really great tools that we'll share with you, okay? All right. One other item of note, and we're going to start jumping into some more examples too, is the support system. I've seen some really great examples out there and some areas of improvement that are needed at organizations. But here's what I want you to write down, okay? It's not the amount that you're doing for communication. It is the consistency between your volunteers, okay? Let me say that again. It's not the amount. You don't have to email them every day or even every week. Gosh, I'm sure they don't want emails every day. It's about how consistent you are with your communication. Rhythm of cadence is key, okay? So for example, one of the best things we did with Detroit Startup Week was every Wednesday at 7 o'clock, I held a 30-minute webinar just to share the updates with what happened in the past week. New sponsors that came on board, new speakers we had. We ended up having over 265 speakers in 5 days with over 110 events. So it was a huge logistical event. And that could have been a nightmare, but the cadence was what was key, okay? So if you're going to hold some kind of, you know, maybe you're going to send them a monthly email. Maybe you're going to hold a bi-weekly call-in so everyone can get updates and ask questions or ask for help. Do it at the same day, the same time, the same structure, okay? Consistency is so important. Humans are habitual. When we have to think through something new, it provides all this anxiety and stress. When I know exactly what to expect, it allows me to concentrate on what you want me to concentrate on, okay? So consistency is key. All right, David, 100%, man. I want to share this. David had said, we struggle with how to communicate without seeming like spam. But after hanging out with ASE folks, I don't think we communicate enough. I totally agree. So the amount is really kind of based on what kind of organization or what you're communicating. But stay consistent, and it'll allow you to build off of it. So maybe you start with the first Monday of the month. You hold a webinar to communicate to volunteers, and then you can grow off of that. But what I want to communicate is it's the consistency. So keep it on that Monday at 12 o'clock. Now, Kyle, how do we find out which day to do it? Survey. Go back and survey your people, your volunteers. What are the best days to communicate with them, right? And then if they can't be there, you'll have a recording, things like that. Okay, so let's talk about automation real quick. Now, here's the problem with AMS software. And AMS software is great. It depends on how you use it. But the problem with it can be it's so expensive that national has all these tools that the local chapters or state associations do not. Or I know a lot of you are shaking your head yes when I say, are your local components all using different systems? We see some crazy inefficiencies when it comes to this. Maybe they're all using different event software. Maybe they're all using different databases. Maybe they're all using fill in the blank, CMSs or websites. And it causes a lot more cost to your organization, right? And then it also doesn't allow you to have transparency into data and things like that. One of your goals needs to be in your technology. And there's a lot of free technology that's out there, and we shared that slide earlier that we'll send out. But invest in really great processes via technology. And you don't got to tackle it all at once. Figure out what HQ wants, which I'm going to guess is a lot of around data transparency. But then go find out from your volunteers what they want help with. One of the biggest things we see, and Bill Highway helps with this, is all the financial and accounting processes. Your chapter volunteers don't sign up to be an accountant, right? Maybe a treasurer, I get that, but that's not the same thing. The busy work of all of these processes that technology can solve will greatly improve your life. Now, we can get into a whole other conversation about how you roll that out and how you say, hey, HQ wants to help you with X, Y, Z, but they say, we don't want you touching our systems, right? How many of the chapter volunteers have told you that? So there's a right way and a wrong way of doing it, and I'm sure we have a lot of examples here from the past that didn't work. But what I want you to accept as a mantra is you need to invest in better technology, period. It starts with you. So investing in that type of software is extremely important. All right, so some key takeaways, and we're going to dive into some more good stuff, is chapter leader volunteers. Again, they can be one of your greatest assets, and let me just share a little bit from last week. So, and I see a few familiar faces in here from last week when we talked to Dresden. And Dresden took over as the CRP, the chapter or the component relations professional at COSIN, the Consortium of School Networkers, a nonprofit association. And she flipped this obstacle on its head, and they told her, hey, again, HQ was saying, our chapter's even worth it. She got that question a ton of times, and I think Lisa or Leslie asked that earlier, or said that earlier. And she flipped it on its head. And what was so impressive was she re-engineered the process of, A, what chapters are to the association, how to engage the volunteers and the leadership there, and how to support them better. Her numbers were incredible. It was not only double-digit growth, but it was double-digit retention, and the increase in money to the organization was outstanding. Some of her state associations doubled in membership. And she created such a better system. So if you haven't seen that one, we'll send that out again if you email us. We're actually going to be doing hopefully another webinar with her going over the different tools she used. But that's why we're all here today, because a better system will increase retention, it will help with recruitment, and it will 100% create better engagement, which along all lines of your organization will benefit your impact. All right, let's take a breath. How are we doing out there? Everyone's still with us? We're having great engagement in the webinar here, which is awesome. All right, so let's go over one of the challenges. What do you do with absent volunteers? So I asked this question earlier. I'm going to ask it again, and you can just put exclamation marks in the chat box if you want. What do you do with absent volunteers? So how many of you right now have an outstanding item, question, task from one of your local volunteers or chapter, even staff? How many of you have something that you're owed at this moment, right? How many of you, I've seen a lot of exclamation marks, Sylvia, Lisa, David, I know Patrick. How many of you need something right now? Leslie, what do you do with that, right? They're a volunteer. You can't fire them, right? Well, why not? How do you measure up? What tools and tactics have you tried to make volunteers' lives easier, and have they worked? And are you measuring these volunteers, right? Chip, sometimes you have to just fire a volunteer. Oh gosh, Chip, you and I are going to talk about that in a couple of weeks. You have to be able to fire volunteers. There is, just like everything else in the world, there are good and bad, right? Sometimes really good, sometimes horrific. And you need to find a system where you are able to, inside your organization, I know politically sometimes is the issue, but you need to be able to fire volunteers. And there's a good way of doing it where they stay members, right? Because chances are, if they're not getting back to you, they have all this anxiety built up in them that they want to release. So you can say, hey, is this working out? Okay, that's number one. Number two, we're going to go over in a second, and that is succession planning. So someone's been there for a really long time. You want to have a good process and cadence to bring in new and fresh blood. Fresh blood, that was no pun intended, even though we have our Halloween theme going. All right, so let's talk about succession planning. How many of you have some kind of succession plan for your local chapters or components? I would love to know the answer to this one. How many of you have a succession plan for your volunteers? Lisa, any tools on how to fire volunteers? Absolutely. She says, I have some that are becoming toxic. You're not alone. So first off, take some solace in that. Second, absolutely, we can give you some frameworks. It's actually that GWC, Get It, Want It Capacity, is actually a framework we use that can help you do that in what we call letters of opportunity. And so I will absolutely share those with you, Lisa, and anybody else that wants those as well. David says, chapters want the national office to referee internal conflicts. It is tough to do that. Yeah, David, I'm going to go over that in just a second. I'm going to write that down so I don't forget it. Okay. Everybody said so far that nobody has a standard succession plan for their local leaders. Write this down. I'm sure 2016 you already have all your goals and objectives. Write this down for an upcoming objective to change at your organization. Succession plans are so important. Sylvia, great point. You've recommended succession plans, but it's up to them. I will say this is the most common answer we see. Well, between that and no. And what I want to convey to you is you need to provide some kind of template for them. I'll go back to my example with Startup Week, and not that this is the, Startup Week's the best at this, but it's an experience that I have that I can share. And their succession plan, my expectations coming into the Startup Week to help lead it and bring it to Detroit was a 2-year commitment as the lead. So first year was all about starting at Detroit. This second year coming up, which we're starting in a couple of months, and the event for Detroit takes place in May. The second one, my main goal, I have all the momentum now. We have all the organizations in the city involved and things like that, or a lot of them. My main goal is to find who's going to take it over for the next 2 years, put them on my leadership team this year, and teach them everything that I do so that they can take it over next year. And then I'll step back and I'll be an advisor for year 3, 4, and beyond. But there's a succession plan in place and expectations are set that way, okay? So if you do not have a succession plan for your volunteers, write that down. Here's something that was super important for me taking and getting involved in Startup Week. Knowing that it was only a 2-year commitment made it easier for me to make that commitment because I knew after the second year I was done. If it's an ongoing perpetual thing or it's not defined, you just leave so much room for error. And really good people might not have all that time in the world to do it, or they might feel bad for leaving. This allows it not to become about Kyle. It's not Kyle's Detroit Startup Week, it's Detroit's Startup Week. And if I have to turn over every 2 years, it can't become about a person, which I'm sure if you have toxic volunteers, their ego is too wrapped up in that local component. And that is a big issue, okay? So we talked about a lot of us need to survey better, and a lot of us need better succession planning. We got to provide that to our local leaders. And just let's wrap this back, back around for the responsibilities. So, make sure, and I'm sure a lot of you do, what are the job descriptions for your local volunteers? Okay. Due dates. We talked about that scheduling and those calendars. I often see people send out an email saying, this is due on this date, this is due on this date, and that's due on this date. And then when they don't receive them, they're saying, I told you, why didn't you send that in? If it's not on the calendar and accepted on the calendar as a due date from your local volunteers, it's not real, okay? Let me say that again. If you don't have a due date on your local volunteers' calendar and they have not accepted it, it's not real, okay? So next time a due date is missed and you didn't do that, understand that you're setting yourself up for failure at HQ or your state association, not your components. Now, are they all going to fulfill it? No, but this is a really important and simple tool you can use to communicate better to them, okay? So due dates need to be on calendars, and you need to have due dates. And then making sure you communicate expectations. And part 2 of that bullet point is making sure that they have formally accepted those expectations. And you can't just do that over coffee or over the phone. It's got to be in writing. And it can go back to even having them fill out a simple check the box, I read this and this is what is expected of me. And again, keep it simple. Make it a one-pager. If you can't fit the expectations into a one-pager, we already got other problems we need to deal with, okay? So communicate expectations and make sure they accept them, or make sure they are accepting them. And then succession planning, next in command, okay? Now this might seem really overwhelming if you just took over or your organization doesn't have any of this, okay? Local leaders, what do they need right now? And then you'll be able to get what you need by solving problems for them, okay? But just start somewhere. All right, so we're going to jump into some training, okay? This is really important, and we got a bunch of really good nuggets on this one, so make sure you guys got your notes ready. 70% of marketing professionals report that video converts better than any other medium. 64% of consumers are more likely to buy a product after watching a video about it. How many of you are using video? Whether it's an LMS, whether it is a webinar like this, how many of you are using video? For Startup Week, we actually use Google Hangouts, which is a free app to use. Google Hangouts, so I can always see their faces, because some of the team members are in like Barcelona that are at HQ, and we always get to see each other, and it provides a level of commitment and relationship to the dynamic. So are you using video? How-to and cheat sheets. I would something you could easily do after this is send out a survey or even just email the chapter leaders that you're close with and ask them what are some how-to cheat sheets that they need, such as how to run a great event, how to increase registration for an event, how to create really great blog content, how to, you can fill in the blank. Best practices. So again, make sure during your training that you start sharing great examples from other chapters. So one way you could do this is, let's say you have a monthly call-in for all your local volunteers, which I would say should be close to the minimum that you're doing if you're running chapters. And a call-in can be a 30-minute agenda just to give updates and see where everything's at, and also field any asks from the group. But are you sharing best practices from other chapters as well? I would underline this one for this reason. This will help you get things done down the road. If you're saying, hey, we want to improve event registration, and you share it from the local who's doing it well, it will get so much better adoption than otherwise. Okay. And I'm sorry if you hear a little bit of background noise. I am on vacation, but I love doing these webinars. So I'm doing this from up north Michigan, and those are my two puppies in the background fighting. So sorry about that. But I did not want to miss our webinar today. All right, let's keep moving here. E-learning training videos. So I would start small. Start with an email or a blog post on how-to and best practices, and then you can graduate into e-learning training videos. There's a lot of really great tools out there, whether that's at your AMS or otherwise. Online community. This is one of the fastest growing tools that we're seeing adopted by associations right now. Higher Logic and Socius are two of the leaders out there that have great platforms, but some of your AMSs will also have some of this functionality. But the online community is wicked powerful for your organization, okay? I just talked to somebody recently that just implemented this for their chapter leaders. Again, there's one for your members, and then there's one just for your chapter leaders. And that's important. Make it exclusive to your chapter volunteers. Why? Because then they feel like it's for them, all right? If you just include it as a side note in your membership one, it's going to get less use and less adoption out of it, okay? Online communities are crazy, crazy awesome when you do them right for your chapter volunteers. But again, that one takes a little bit of getting up to, right? Start with best practices and surveys and learning about your chapter leaders, and then graduate eventually up to your online community, because most likely that's going to have to be a strategic objective at the national organization. And then face-to-face. I saw a lot of people earlier say they have a once-a-year type of ordeal. What I would say is most of you have some kind of convention or annual event. All of this cadence will lead up to inviting them to that annual event and getting some face-to-face time with your leaders. So maybe at your big membership convention, you have a small component of that that's just to sit down and engage with your local volunteers. Super important. It's like the 6 degrees of communication. The best is face-to-face. It doesn't get any better than that to build a relationship and rapport with these people. And then a mentor program. So I was just talking to a gentleman that is, we were shooting around some ideas on how to improve chapter relations, and he said and brought up this concept of mentorship at your chapters. So taking your more experienced, typically older members or volunteers, and have them mentor a couple of younger ones. Or, maybe it has nothing to do with age, maybe it's just about engagement. Ones that are constantly engaged, attending all these local events, but they don't have a role at the organization. one way you can easily do that is, even if they can't get involved right now, have them get mentored by one of your chapter leaders, which eventually can turn into a succession plan, but also will help with that retaining good talent for leadership. And then a boot camp. So we're actually going to be doing some, we've been doing these webinars now for a couple of months, and I was just talking to my team and I said, hey, what could be really useful for CRPs? Because all of our webinars are just for chapter leaders, component leaders. There's nothing out there that's just for CRPs. We're just for CRPs. That's all we do. And this idea of a boot camp, where you can set aside time to really dive in to improve these skills and learn other ways of doing it from other associations that can help you tell a story at your office, HQ, to help get buy-in for this. So do you do a boot camp similarly for your chapters? Maybe the first week of January you run this boot camp, and it can be virtual every year, where you're going over Monday is this topic, Tuesday is this topic, Wednesday is this topic, every day at 6 o'clock or every day at noon or something like that. And then obviously recording it for people that can't be there. But a boot camp can be once in your heavy duty hands-on training. And then a leadership advisory group. If you've been on these webinars, you've heard me preach, get a working group. Okay, so you can't always engage the whole of your leadership at the volunteer level. But if you create a working group of early adopters, that can really help you tip the scales when you're trying to roll different processes or platforms out. So get this advisory group made up of a diverse mix, geographically and demographically, of your chapter volunteer leaders. Okay, get a working group and have a call once a quarter. Okay, or maybe it's project-based or something like that. But create a working group if you don't have it. Okay, so we're coming to the top of the hour already, and I got some more questions to get to that I will in just a second. So if you do have additional questions, or maybe you've got to run at the top of the hour, throw your questions in here, and we'll make sure to follow up with you after the webinar. But lessons learned today, and you guys have taught me a couple of things, which always happens. But adapt. So volunteer landscape is it's changing rapidly. You'll constantly hear me help you to tell a story. You need to become a great communicator. That's your job. You need to tell a story, to your HQ, whether that's international or your national association's office, to your executive director or CEO, or your CIO who's asking why the hell do we have chapters, they're just a pain, or to your marketing lead, whoever it is. And then secondly, or B, I can't remember if I did A or B, B is to your chapter volunteers. Okay, you are that bridge between the two. Okay, you are that bridge of communication to move the association forward. I would arguably say, if your organization has components, your position as a CRP is one of the most impactful and important positions in your association for so many reasons. But you hold the keys to create incredible impact. And I think that is often a little bit scary, but really, really awesome when you start coming into it. And then cadence. We talked about cadence earlier. So make sure that, first off, you understand what the appetite is for meeting and talking, but then provide that cadence and the proper tools to do that. Have a plan in place. We talked about a lot today, but start somewhere. Write down everything you want, and then start prioritizing it. And that's the easiest way to start getting a plan together. And then simplify. So local components, responsibilities need to be simplified. All right, so let me go over what's up next for us. I meant to mention this at the beginning of the webinar. This is something we started doing, these webinars and all this information, because we recognize that out in the nonprofit world, specifically the association world, there is nothing that's just for CRPs, just for component relations professionals. There are great tools out there, like the ASAE has their own component section. A lot of websites have things for chapters, but nothing that just focuses on you and the nuances that exist in the multi-entity component type structure. And there's so many nuances, even from reviewing an AMS to getting better event software to processes with volunteers. If an association just has headquarters and members, like the NRA or AARP, and there's no chapters, then their challenges are always different. Not always. Their challenges can often be different because they don't have that structure. So I say all that just to let you know, we're shooting for every week to do a webinar and build out this really great series of content just for you. This is Bill Highway is a place for CRPs. And next week, Wednesday at 2 o'clock, we are doing Chapters versus National, creating a stronger, more collaborative association. We're going to be doing this with Association Trends, and this actually qualifies for 1.5 CAE credits. And we'll send out the link after this webinar. And actually, I'll see if I can drop it into the chat so you can check it out. And here's the page to sign up. So if you are interested, we're going to be doing something with them. I just dropped the link into the chat box, so check that out. And then the week after that, we're going to be talking about chapter collaboration, get their input, and be their knight in shining armor. This is with Chip Deal, the VP of Membership and Chapter Relations at FEI. And before that, he was at the CFA Institute. I got a chance to meet Chip in Newark a couple weeks ago and sit down with him, and we just had a great conversation. He's one of the coolest guys out there, really cares about what he does, and he also has been crazy successful at some of the stuff that he's done. But Chip's also a guy that is always constantly learning what else is out there. So incredible guest that we're going to have on a webinar in a couple weeks. So that's what's coming up. Additional resources, so stay tuned for that email where we'll send out this recording because we have a ton of good resources here. But something new that we're going to try, and we'll see how many of you find use of this, is I'm dropping another link into the chat, is to get a quick assessment for your chapter project, maybe it's an initiative, or if you just want me to give you a call and talk about your challenges. Maybe you just got to your association and you're like, holy crap, this is a complete mess. Where do I start? Give me a call or fill this landing page out and let's chat. I'd love to walk you through other examples that have worked, haven't worked, and then at the very least connect you with amazing people out there. I mentioned a few of them in the webinar today. There's a lot of other good ones when we talk about additional resources to do maybe better board meetings. Maybe it's better volunteer engagement. Maybe it's how do you grow event registration, so on and so forth. Okay, maybe you just want to learn. Just give us or fill it out, and we will give you a call. All right, I know we're a few minutes over today. I feel like I got a little bit too excited on some of this stuff, but let's go over some questions. So if that's it for you, that's the end of the webinar. I'm going to just go over some questions right now. Feel free to contact us. Feel free to get that assessment we talked about. I'll leave that page up with the link. But no, you'll get this webinar recording and everything as well as the resources. And hopefully you can attend next week or the week after. All right, let's get to some questions. Chip, you flatter me. Chip, no problem, man. You deserve it. Leslie, we're starting an advisory group next year. Looking forward to it the most. Absolutely. Leslie, let me know if you want me to share some examples of other working groups and how to set up that agenda and how to manage that. There's some really great stuff out there, and I'd be happy to walk you through that. Sylvia, thanks, great stuff. Do you offer CAE credit for this webinar? We actually don't, but I will. I know my marketing team's on here. We'll talk to ASAE to see if we can start doing that for you. So Sylvia, I'm glad you said that because we'll see if there's any way we can get that done for you. Lisa, thanks for doing this. They are so informative. No problem. So glad you came again, Lisa. David, top of the mitten. That's right. I think we're actually in the middle of the mitten at Higgins Lake now, but yeah, that's absolutely right. I don't know if you're from Michigan or your family is. Sylvia, you also talked about we are working on using LMS for volunteer training and onboarding. Great. Sylvia, something I'd share with you is start somewhere and learn what's working and not working. Okay. Oftentimes people look at a project and say it flopped because only maybe half of it was really good. So stick with that half and cut the other half out. But I would survey your volunteer leaders to figure out what they want training on as well, because that's how you can get adoption. Okay. And then if you're able to, over time, set the expectations where they have to take that training before they come on board. Okay. I know that's a little more difficult, and I'd love to hear from you on that. But that's really important. Is they got to have the expectation that they have to take that training to be a treasurer, to be a chapter officer, to be a board member at the chapter level, whatever that may be. And just to go one step further, yes, some people will push back on that initially, but over time, what I would do is maybe it's a new chapter, maybe it's one of your in trouble chapters, maybe it's one of your chapters that just had a new leadership takeover. Start with them, okay? Because you'll get adoption over time across more chapters, but start with them and show why it's so impactful to the organization. David, next year, I think that's what you're talking about for your working group. That's great. Great to hear people doing that. Yep, Sylvia, it's not easy to make it mandatory over time, but it's necessary, okay? And what you do is you can take a chapter and almost make a case study out of it, show the problems before, really frame that up, and then once you make training mandatory, show what happened to that organization after. Maybe you had greater retention at the volunteer level, maybe membership grew, maybe retention became better. Whatever that is, find a way to measure the things that you're doing so that way you can get greater buy-in and hopefully greater budget from your headquarters as well. But the great part about this is when you create a working group and you create a cadence, once you start rolling out successful projects like that, it gets way easier. Okay, it gets a lot more simple. Nothing's ever easy. So the difference between simple and complicated, easy and hard. It's always hard, right? But that's why you're there. But you make it very simple because people start really buying in a lot earlier. All right, Lisa, I started an advisory group just before I went on maternity leave. It fell flat while I was out, and I don't know how to get rid of the toxic chair that took the position. Great question, Lisa. Great question. So I'd love to get on the phone with you to dive into this a little bit more, because I know it has a bit to do with your governance and what power you have to remove this person. If you have the complete power, how you go about it is extremely important. But I would love to talk through that with you. One way of doing it is if we can go back and set up expectations for these people, and then use that as a system to say, here's the 7 things we're expecting, and they're not happening. Maybe you need X% of attendance on calls, or X amount of people to show up to an event or to a board meeting, or the working group needs to do X, Y, Z. You set those expectations, and if the chair is not able to do it, then that's one way we can help you remove that person. But then also unpacking why they are so toxic. So Lisa, email me, and I'd love to. Oh, you already filled out the form. Great. Yeah, let's sit down and unpack that, because I got some really great examples in the association space that could work for you. But I want you to know something. Kudos for trying something. Okay. Don't confuse the results with the effort. All right. I know people say saying the other way, the efforts with results, but just because it was bad doesn't mean that it's the wrong thing to do. We just got to figure out a different way of doing it, or put different people in the seats. David, great program, Kyle. Enjoy being a Youper for a while. There you go. Stop at Black Star Farms. Okay. All right. I haven't heard of that actually. We were actually at Sleeping Bear Dunes, my wife and I, last week. All right. Let's go over a couple more questions. Yes, so someone said we are working on using an LMS for volunteer training onboarding. It's super, super powerful. It seems like the succession plans were a lot of the issues. So my marketing team is hearing me right now. We're going to see if we can put together a webinar or some material just on succession planning for you guys, as well as survey tools. I had a couple of questions on firing volunteers, and we'll go over that in with Chip in our webinar in a couple of weeks. But there's kind of this procedure to do it, right? So our expectations set for a volunteer. What's the ability and governance around it? And let's look at some examples that have happened before, and let's start with ones that we can prioritize that you believe you need the most, but also that we can show success with at getting better chapter volunteers in there, so you can get better buy-in from the organization. There's definitely ways of doing that. So if you are having issues firing volunteers, fill out that form and let's chat, because we can give you guys some tools for that. All right, so it looks like we got through most of this. Lisa, you said face-to-face is more difficult due to budget cuts. Yeah, absolutely, and lack of value placed on our chapters. I'm excited to talk to you. We're gonna get some cool tools out there. All right, everybody, that's going to do it for us today. Thanks for joining. We are sending everything out, so take a look in your email in the next couple of days as my team gets it over to you. That's going to do it for us. Looking forward to talking. I see a lot of people filled out that form, so we will be talking to you very soon, and definitely appreciate everyone's time today. Angie, thanks a lot for coming. Lisa, David, Sylvia, Leslie, Chip, everyone, thanks for the engagement in the chat box. It makes for a much better webinar. Sarah, John, we appreciate everyone's time. We'll talk to everyone soon. Bye-bye.